Her hands trembled, not just from the cold, but from the terrifying finality of what she was about to do. The gold band, her last link to a love lost too soon, felt impossibly heavy, yet it was her only ticket to escape, to protect the life growing within her. She knew the risks, the judgment, the utter desperation of her situation. But as she raised her hand to knock on the pawn shop door, a stranger's voice, deep and resonant, cut through the quiet morning, offering a lifeline she never saw coming. What he offered wasn't just money, but a chance at a new beginning, a future that defied all her fears. This isn't just a story of a desperate woman. It's about a hidden past, a powerful secret, and a man who saw beyond the surface to offer a love that would change everything. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The dust of Havenwood settled thickly on Abigail Moore's worn shoes, a constant reminder of the arid landscape and the even drier hope that had withered in her heart. Her threadbare shawl, once a comfort, now felt like a shroud, doing little to ward off the biting morning chill or the deeper, pervasive cold of her despair. She stood outside the small, nondescript building that served as the town's pawnshop, its faded sign creaking mournfully in the sparse breeze. Each gust seemed to whisper warnings of her impending fate, a future shadowed by the relentless pursuit of her late husband's family. Her hand, pale and trembling, clutched the single, most precious item she still possessed, her wedding ring. It was a simple gold band, unadorned, yet it held the weight of a love that had burned brightly, if too briefly, and the crushing sorrow of its loss. Her late husband, David, had slipped it onto her finger with a whispered promise of forever, a promise now shattered by fate's cruel hand. Selling it felt like tearing a piece of her soul away, but the alternative, losing her unborn child to the grasping clutches of David's family, was a torment she could not endure. They saw her as an interloper, a commoner unworthy of the family name, and the child she carried as their rightful heir, a means to exert control. She had to flee before they could enact their legal maneuvers to claim what they believed was theirs. The ring was her only currency, for freedom, for escape from this suffocating town and the impending legal battle. A guttural rumble startled her, drawing her attention to the dusty road. A powerful, dark-colored stallion, magnificent and wild, was being led off a transport wagon by a stable hand. The horse shifted restlessly, its muscles rippling beneath its sleek coat, its eyes rolling in a display of untamed power. Standing beside the wagon, his back to her, was a man who seemed to embody the raw strength of the animal. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a presence that commanded the space around him. His wide-brimmed hat cast a shadow over his face, but even from a distance, Abigail sensed an aura of quiet authority, an inherent power that was both intimidating and, strangely, compelling. He turned then, and his gaze, sharp and perceptive, met hers. He had piercing blue eyes, set in a tanned, rugged face that spoke of long days spent under the sun and wind. There was a directness in his gaze, an almost unsettling intensity that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed facade of composure. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just observed her, his eyes lingering on her trembling hands, on the slight, almost imperceptible curve of her belly beneath the shawl. Abigail felt a blush creep up her neck, a hot wave of humiliation washing over her. She quickly tucked her hand away, attempting to appear less vulnerable, less desperate. She tried to avert her gaze, but something held her there, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The man, without a word, finished his inspection of the horse. He handed a wad of cash to the stable hand, his movements efficient and unhurried. Then, with a casual grace that belied his powerful build, he turned and began to walk towards the pawn shop, his spurs jingling softly with each confident stride. Abigail's heart pounded in her chest. Was he going into the shop too? Would he witness her humiliation? She wanted to disappear, to melt into the dusty earth. She considered bolting, running away from the inevitable, but her legs felt like lead, rooted to the spot by a combination of fear and a strange, nascent curiosity about this man. He stopped just a few feet from her, his presence utterly dominating the small space. The air seemed to thicken with his quiet intensity. "Morning," he said, his voice deep and resonant, like stones tumbling in a river. It was a simple greeting, yet it held a surprising weight. Abigail swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. "Good morning," she managed, her voice barely a whisper, hoarse from disuse and anxiety. He didn't ask what she was doing there, didn't offer pity. He simply looked at her, his blue eyes unwavering, observing her with a disarming directness. "You look like you're carrying a heavy load," he finally said, his gaze briefly flicking to her abdomen, then back to her eyes. It wasn't a question, more of a statement of fact, devoid of judgment. Abigail flinched, instinctively clutching her belly. She hadn't thought her condition was so obvious yet. I'm fine," she stammered, the lie tasting bitter on her tongue. He shook his head slowly, a faint, almost imperceptible frown creasing his brow. "Doesn't look like fine to me. You're trembling." His eyes then dropped to her hand, which still unconsciously clutched the ring. "And that looks like something you don't want to part with." Her cheeks burned. How could he see so much, with so few words? It's all I have left," she confessed, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "And I need to leave." She couldn't bring herself to explain the dark reason for her flight, the threat of losing her child to a family consumed by status and wealth. He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze thoughtful, analytical. Abigail felt laid bare under his scrutiny, exposed and vulnerable. "Leaving Havenwood ain't easy, especially not when you're in your condition," he stated, his voice still low, but now with a hint of something she couldn't quite decipher, perhaps concern. "Where do you aim to go?" Abigail looked away, her eyes stinging. "Anywhere," she whispered, "as long as it's far from here." He nodded slowly, as if considering her words. Then, to her utter astonishment, he spoke again, his voice dropping to a near murmur. "I might be able to help you. Not with that." He gestured subtly towards the pawn shop, but with a way out, a new start. Abigail stared at him, disbelief warring with a flicker of desperate hope. "Why?" she managed, her voice barely audible. "Why would you help a stranger?" His gaze was direct, unwavering. "Because some folks just need a hand up, not a hand out," he said, his voice devoid of sentimentality, yet holding a surprising depth of conviction. "And because I don't like seeing a woman in your state forced to give up what's precious." He paused, then extended a hand, large and calloused, but steady. "Micah Stone. I own the Circle S Ranch, about 2 days' ride west of here." Abigail hesitated, her mind reeling. A rancher? 2 days' ride away? It was a wild, improbable offer. But what other choice did she have? The pawn shop promised only temporary relief, followed by continued fear and a constant looking over her shoulder. This stranger, Micah Stone, offered something more, something intangible, yet undeniably real. A chance. A flicker of hope ignited within her, small but persistent. Slowly, almost hesitantly, she reached out and placed her trembling hand in his. His grip was firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle. "Abigail Moore," she replied, her voice gaining a surprising strength. "Thank you, Mr. Stone. I don't know what to say." "Just say you'll consider it," he said, his blue eyes holding hers. "Come with me. Let's talk over some coffee. We can figure something out." He didn't press, didn't demand. He simply offered, leaving the choice entirely to her. And in that quiet offer, Abigail saw not just an escape, but a fragile possibility of a future she hadn't dared to dream of. Abigail found herself following Micah Stone, her heart still a frantic drum against her ribs, but now mingled with a growing sense of bewildered curiosity. He led her not into the pawn shop, but to a small, unassuming diner a few doors down, its windows fogged with the warmth of coffee and frying bacon. The aroma, though faint, awakened a new kind of emptiness in her stomach, one that gnawed deeper than fear. She hadn't had a proper meal in days, her meager funds stretched to their absolute limit. Inside, the diner was bustling with the morning crowd, mostly ranchers and townspeople, their conversations a low hum that filled the space. Micah led her to a booth tucked away in the back, its worn red leather surprisingly comfortable. He didn't speak as he settled opposite her, simply motioned for the waitress. "Coffee for two, Sally," he said, his voice a familiar rumble. Then, turning his gaze back to Abigail, he added, "And a plate of whatever looks good to you, Abigail. Don't be shy." Abigail felt a blush creep up her neck again, the attention uncomfortable, yet also deeply appreciated. The simple act of ordering food for her, without judgment or expectation, was a profound kindness she hadn't experienced in too long. She settled on a plate of scrambled eggs, bacon, and biscuits, her mouth watering at the thought. As the waitress bustled away, a comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the clatter of dishes and the murmur of other patrons. Micah didn't prod her with questions, didn't try to fill the void with small talk. He simply sat, his presence a quiet anchor. Abigail, emboldened by his unspoken understanding, found herself studying him more closely. His face, though rugged, held an honesty that was disarming. His hands, resting on the table, were large and capable, scarred from years of hard work. He wore simple, practical rancher's clothes, but they were impeccably clean, speaking of a disciplined nature. When their food arrived, Abigail ate with a hunger she hadn't known she possessed, savoring each bite. The warmth of the coffee, the richness of the eggs, the salty crispness of the bacon, all combined to bring a fleeting moment of pure, unadulterated pleasure. She felt strength seeping back into her weary body, chasing away some of the gnawing fear that had become her constant companion. Micah ate slowly, observing her with a quiet intensity that was both unsettling and strangely reassuring. When she'd finished, pushing her empty plate away, he finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "So, Abigail Moore, you're looking for a way out, and you're carrying a child. That makes your situation delicate." Abigail braced herself, expecting pity, or perhaps a lecture, but his tone was simply factual, devoid of judgment. "My husband, David, he passed away 6 months ago," she began, her voice a little shaky as she recounted the bare bones of her story. "His family, they don't approve of me. They want to take my baby when it's born." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken pain and fear. Micah listened, his expression unreadable, his gaze fixed on some distant point. When she finished, a heavy silence descended, broken only by the diner's ambient noise. Abigail felt a renewed wave of despair. She had laid bare her deepest fear, and what could this stranger possibly do? Then, Micah looked at her, his blue eyes sharp and direct. "They can't take a child from its mother, not without cause," he stated, his voice firm. "Do they have cause?" Abigail wrung her hands. "They say I'm not fit, that I'm an opportunist, that I only married David for his family's money." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They're powerful, Mr. Stone, and they have lawyers. They've made my life a living hell since David passed." Micah nodded slowly, his jaw tight. "I see." He was quiet for a moment. Then, to Abigail's utter astonishment, he spoke again, his voice lower, more deliberate. "My ranch, the Circle S, is a big place. I live there mostly by myself. I could use a cook, a housekeeper, someone reliable, and a child." He paused, his gaze softening almost imperceptibly. A child would be a welcome addition to the quiet. Abigail stared at him, her mind reeling. He was offering her a job? A home? A sanctuary? It seemed too incredible to be true. A lifeline thrown from the heavens. You would do that?" she stammered, her voice thick with disbelief. "For a stranger?" Micah leaned forward slightly, his blue eyes holding hers with an intense sincerity. "It's not just about you, Abigail. It's about what's right. And I believe in doing what's right." He paused, then continued, his voice taking on a more businesslike tone. "I'd pay you a fair wage. You have your own room, plenty of food, and nobody, least of all some greedy in-laws, would bother you out there. The Circle S is private land. Folks around here know not to cross me." His tone was firm, a quiet warning in his words. Abigail felt a glimmer of hope ignite within her, a fragile flame against the encroaching darkness. It was a risk, a leap of faith into the unknown, but what choice did she have? The alternative was a life on the run, a constant fear for her child's future. This was a chance, a genuine, tangible chance at stability and safety. "What would be expected of me?" she asked, her voice gaining a surprising strength. She needed to know the terms, to ensure she wasn't trading one form of servitude for another. "Honesty, hard work, and a respect for the land and the way things are done out there," Micah replied, his gaze unwavering. "Nothing more, nothing less. You'd be safe, Abigail. You and your baby." Abigail considered his offer, weighing the risks against the desperate need for sanctuary. His eyes held no deceit, only a stark, unwavering honesty. He seemed like a man of his word, a man who built his life on solid ground, not on shifting sands. And the thought of being safe, truly safe, was a siren song to her weary soul. She took a deep breath, her decision made. "I accept, Mr. Stone," she said, her voice clear and firm. "Thank you. Thank you more than words can say." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Micah's lips. "Good," he said, rising from the booth. "Finish your coffee. We'll leave as soon as I settle up. Got a long ride ahead of us." As they stepped out of the diner, the sun was higher, warming the dusty street. Abigail took a moment, looking at the pawn shop, its faded sign still creaking in the breeze. She slipped the wedding ring from her finger, the gold band glinting in the sunlight. With a deep breath, she tucked it securely into a small pocket sewn into her shawl, a secret kept for a day when she might feel truly safe enough to honor its memory without fear. She wouldn't sell it. Micah Stone had given her a chance to keep it, a chance to hold on to a piece of her past while stepping bravely into an uncertain, yet hopeful future. The journey to the Circle S Ranch was long and arduous. 2 days of relentless riding across a landscape that shifted from dusty plains to rolling hills dotted with scrub brush and hardy pines. Abigail, unused to such travel, felt every jolt and sway of the horse, her body aching, her pregnancy a constant, heavy presence. Yet, a strange sense of exhilaration began to mix with her fatigue. With every mile they put between her and Havenwood, the suffocating grip of fear loosened, replaced by a nascent hope for the unknown future stretching before her. Micah, riding slightly ahead, was a silent, unyielding presence. He spoke little, offering only terse instructions or observations about the land. But his silence was not unsettling. It was simply a part of him, a reflection of a man who found his comfort in action rather than words. He never hurried her, allowing her frequent stops to rest and ensuring she had enough water. He also made sure she ate, offering her dried jerky and biscuits from his saddlebag, his gaze always steady and watchful. On the second afternoon, as the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and red, Micah reined in his horse, gesturing with a nod. "There it is," he said, his voice a low rumble. Abigail followed his gaze, and her breath caught in her throat. Sprawling before them, nestled in a wide valley, was the Circle S Ranch. It was larger than anything she had imagined, a collection of sturdy, well-maintained buildings, a grand farmhouse, a massive barn, corrals teeming with horses, and several smaller outbuildings. The sheer scale of it was breathtaking, a testament to generations of hard work and prosperity. A sense of awe mingled with a fresh wave of trepidation. This was a man of significant means, a powerful figure in this vast landscape. Could she truly fit into this world? As they rode closer, the scent of wood smoke and rich earth filled the air, a comforting aroma. Ranch hands, their faces tanned and weathered, moved about their duties, their presence adding to the sense of industry and life that permeated the place. They greeted Micah with respectful nods, their gazes briefly lingering on Abigail, a silent acknowledgement of her unexpected presence. Micah dismounted with an easy grace, then reached up to help Abigail down. His hands were strong and steady as he lowered her to the ground, his touch surprisingly gentle. "Welcome to the Circle S, Abigail," he said, his blue eyes meeting hers. "This is your home now." The words, simple yet profound, resonated deep within her. Home. It was a word she hadn't dared to utter in too long, a concept that felt impossibly distant. Now, it was being offered to her, freely and without expectation. He led her to the farmhouse, a large, two-story structure built of sturdy timber. The porch stretched across the front, inviting and wide. Inside, the house was spacious and simply furnished, reflecting a practical comfort rather than ostentatious wealth. A massive stone fireplace dominated the living room, and the scent of freshly cut wood filled the air. Micah showed her to a room at the back of the house, away from the main living areas, offering a sense of privacy. It was a comfortable space, with a neat bed, a small dresser, and a window that looked out onto a blossoming apple orchard. The sheets were clean, smelling faintly of lavender. "This will be your room," he said, his voice low. "Make yourself comfortable. Rest. You've had a long journey." Abigail sank onto the bed, the soft mattress a luxury her aching body gratefully accepted. She felt a profound sense of relief wash over her, a loosening of the tension that had gripped her for months. She was safe. For now, she was truly safe. In the days and weeks that followed, Abigail slowly began to settle into the rhythm of ranch life. She discovered that Micah was a man of immense routine and discipline. He woke before dawn, worked tirelessly alongside his ranch hands, and oversaw every aspect of his vast property. He was respected, almost revered by his men, who clearly held him in high regard. Her duties were exactly as he had described, cooking and managing the household. The kitchen was large and well-equipped, and Abigail, a natural cook, found joy in preparing hearty meals for Micah and the occasional ranch hand who came to eat at the main house. She cleaned, she organized, and slowly, the house began to reflect her touch, becoming more than just a functional space, but a warm, inviting home. Micah remained a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He left fresh milk and eggs on the kitchen counter each morning, ensuring she had nourishing food. He replaced a broken hinge on a cabinet door and fixed a leaky pump outside, silently attending to the needs of the house without being asked. He was a constant, observant presence, yet never intrusive. He seemed to possess an uncanny ability to anticipate her needs, often appearing with a glass of water when she was thirsty or a warm blanket when she seemed chilled. Abigail, for her part, slowly emerged from the shell she had built around herself. The constant fear of discovery and the looming threat of her in-laws had dulled her spirit. But now, surrounded by the vast, open spaces of the ranch and the quiet, unwavering presence of Micah, she began to heal. She found herself humming as she worked, and sometimes a small, tentative smile would touch her lips. One evening, as Abigail was preparing dinner, Micah came into the kitchen, his boots scuffing softly on the wooden floor. He stood for a moment, watching her, a rare, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "Smells good," he said, his voice a low rumble. Abigail looked up, surprised by the direct compliment. "It's a beef stew," she replied, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. "My mother used to make it." Micah nodded, his gaze distant. "My mother, she was a good cook too," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Passed away when I was young. It's been quiet here since then." It was a small revelation, a tiny crack in the wall of his silence, and Abigail clung to it, intrigued. She learned that he had inherited the ranch from his father, who had also passed away relatively young. Micah had dedicated his life to preserving his family's legacy, to maintaining the Circle S as a beacon of stability in the Wild West. He was a solitary man, driven by responsibility and a deep connection to the land. As her pregnancy advanced, Abigail found herself growing increasingly tired, her movements slower. Micah noticed, of course, though he said nothing directly. He simply started taking on more of the chores, quietly bringing in firewood, preparing her meals on days when she felt particularly weary, and ensuring she had ample time to rest. He would often bring her a cup of warm milk before bed, leaving it on her bedside table without a word, a silent gesture of his protective care. He seemed to understand, intuitively, the delicate balance between offering help and encroaching on her independence. One stormy night, a fierce thunderstorm raged, rattling the windows and sending torrents of rain against the roof. Abigail, restless and anxious, couldn't sleep. She heard a soft knock on her door. "Abigail?" Micah's voice, quiet but concerned, cut through the storm's roar. "Are you all right?" She opened the door, and he was standing there, a lantern in his hand, his face patched with worry. I can't sleep," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. He nodded. "Come," he said, leading her to the living room. A fire crackled merrily in the large stone fireplace, casting a warm glow over the room. He settled her onto a plush armchair, then sat opposite her, his presence a comforting anchor against the storm's fury. They sat in comfortable silence for a long time, the only sounds the crackling fire and the drumming rain. Abigail felt the tension slowly drain from her body, replaced by a profound sense of peace. In the flickering firelight, she looked at Micah, truly looked at him, and saw not just a stoic rancher, but a man of immense strength and quiet compassion. His silence, once a mystery, now felt like a sanctuary, a space where she could simply be, without judgment or expectation. He had offered her not just a place to live, but a place to heal, to breathe, and to prepare for the profound change that awaited her. A thought, startling in its clarity, bloomed in her mind. She was beginning to feel something deeper for this man, a fragile warmth that was slowly blossoming into something akin to love. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. She, a penniless, pregnant widow, falling for the wealthy, solitary Micah Stone? It seemed impossible, a dream too fragile to even entertain. But the feeling was undeniable, a gentle pull towards the man who had offered her refuge and, unknowingly, a chance at a new heart. The spring days stretched out, long and warm, bringing with them a palpable sense of anticipation. Abigail's pregnancy progressed, her body growing heavier, her movements more deliberate. The fears that had once haunted her had receded, replaced by a burgeoning love for the life stirring within her. Micah's unwavering presence had been a steadying force, allowing her to embrace this profound new chapter with a quiet courage she hadn't known she possessed. One crisp morning, as Abigail was hanging laundry on the line, a sharp, unfamiliar pain lanced through her lower back. She gasped, dropping a wet sheet, her breath catching in her throat. Another pain followed, more intense, and a cold sweat broke out on her brow. The sun, usually a comforting warmth, suddenly felt too hot, too bright. Micah, who had been inspecting a distant fence line, seemed to sense her distress. He looked up, his movements swift and sure as he rushed towards her, his long strides covering the distance in moments. "Abigail, what is it?" His voice was laced with a rare urgency. "The baby," she gasped, clutching her belly, her vision blurring at the edges. I think it's time." Micah's face, usually a mask of stoicism, contorted with a mixture of concern and a flicker of raw fear. All right," he said, his voice surprisingly calm despite the visible tension in his jaw. "Let's get you inside. Now." He scooped her up effortlessly, cradling her in his strong arms as if she weighed nothing. He carried her into the farmhouse, moving with a purposeful swiftness, and gently laid her on the bed in her room. He then rushed out, returning moments later with a basin of warm water, clean cloths, and a determined set to his jaw. "The nearest doctor is a day's ride away," he stated, his voice firm, "but I'll send one of the hands immediately. Until then, it'll be just us, Abigail, you and me." Abigail nodded, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps as another contraction gripped her, drawing a soft moan from her lips. Fear, sharp and primal, began to prick at the edges of her mind, but Micah's steady presence, his unwavering blue eyes, became her anchor in the escalating storm of pain. He stayed by her side, his large, calloused hand holding hers, offering a silent, powerful comfort. He wiped her brow with cool cloths, spoke soothing words when the pain became unbearable, and guided her through each wave of contractions with a calmness that belied the situation. His eyes, usually so guarded, held a deep, unspoken concern, and something more, something akin to reverence for the life that was about to enter their world. Hours blurred into a timeless haze of pain and exertion. Abigail pushed, her body straining, guided by Micah's calm, reassuring instructions. He was no doctor, but he was present, fully present, a steadfast rock in the tumultuous sea of her labor. He was unwavering, his presence a silent testament to his commitment. Finally, with a desperate, all-consuming push, a tiny, fragile cry pierced the air. Abigail collapsed back against the pillows, utterly exhausted, but overwhelmed by a profound wave of relief and pure, unadulterated love. Micah, his face smudged with sweat, carefully cradled a tiny, squalling bundle in his arms. "It's a boy," he said, his voice husky with emotion, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. He looked at Abigail, his eyes shining with a mixture of wonder and a deep, quiet pride. "He's perfect, Abigail. Absolutely perfect." He placed the baby gently in her arms. Abigail gazed at her son, a tiny, perfect creature with a shock of dark hair and a surprisingly strong grip. A tear slipped down her cheek, a tear of pure joy, of overwhelming gratitude. "My little David," she whispered, the name coming to her instantly, a poignant tribute to the father he would never know, but a new beginning nonetheless. The ranch hand, sent by Micah, returned later that day with a seasoned midwife from a neighboring town. She examined mother and baby, commending Micah on his calm handling of the delivery, a quiet nod of respect passing between them. The midwife stayed for a few days, offering guidance and support, and leading Abigail feeling more confident in her new role as a mother. In the days that followed, Micah continued to be a constant, protective presence. He would sit by baby David's cradle for hours, just watching him sleep, a soft, almost imperceptible smile on his face. He learned to change the tiny diapers, his large hands surprisingly gentle, and he would often hum a low, tuneless melody as he rocked him. He took on many of the night feedings, insisting that Abigail get her rest, his dedication unwavering. Abigail watched him, her heart overflowing with a love so profound, it sometimes felt like a physical ache. He had not only saved her from a desperate situation, but he had given her a family, a home, a future she could never have imagined. He had embraced her, and more importantly, her child, with an unconditional acceptance that warmed her soul. One evening, as baby David slept peacefully in his cradle, Abigail found Micah sitting on the porch, staring out at the darkening sky. She walked over and sat beside him, the silence between them now feeling like a comfortable blanket, woven with shared experiences and unspoken emotions. "Micah," she began, her voice soft, "thank you. For everything. For David, for saving me, for giving me a home. You've given us a life." He turned to her, his dark blue eyes meeting hers. "You don't need to thank me, Abigail," he said, his voice low. It was the right thing to do. And David, he's a blessing." He paused, his gaze softening as it rested on her. "You're a blessing, Abigail." She hesitated, gathering her courage, her heart pounding with a mix of hope and trepidation. I've grown to care for you, Micah," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "More than I ever thought possible. I've fallen in love with you." He looked away, his gaze returning to the horizon, and for a moment, Abigail's heart sank. Had she overstepped? Was her love unrequited? Then, he turned back to her, his hand reaching out, hesitantly, to cover hers. His touch was warm, reassuring. "Abigail," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I care for you too, more than I've ever cared for anyone." He squeezed her hand gently, his thumb tracing the lines on her skin. "You and little David, you've brought a light into this house, into my life, that I didn't know was missing." His admission, simple and profound, brought a fresh wave of tears to Abigail's eyes, tears of joy and relief. She leaned into him, resting her head on his broad shoulder. His arm came around her, holding her close, a silent promise of comfort and belonging. The vast, quiet ranch, once a symbol of Micah's solitary existence, now held the promise of a shared future, a family built on kindness, unspoken understanding, and a love that had bloomed in the most unexpected of varela. Circumstances. The wedding ring, still tucked safely in her shawl, felt less like a symbol of loss and more like a quiet testament to the resilience of her heart, now ready to embrace a new chapter, a new love, and a new life with Micah and their Baya. Precious son. Life at the Circle S Ranch settled into a rhythm that was both comforting and profoundly fulfilling. Abigail found her stride in the domestic realm, turning the spacious farmhouse into a true home, infused with warmth and the inviting aroma of her cooking. She curated a small herb garden outside the kitchen door, its fragrant offerings enhancing her meals and adding a touch of vibrant green to the rugged landscape. The ranch hands, a stoic but appreciative bunch, began to joke that Micah himself was even smiling more, a subtle but undeniable change. Micah, for his part, found himself constantly drawn to the farmhouse, his workdays often punctuated by brief visits to check on Abigail and little David. He'd stand in the doorway, a quiet observer, his blue eyes softening as he watched Abigail tending to their son or moving about the kitchen. He still spoke sparingly, but his actions, his unwavering support, and the quiet contentment that now radiated from him spoke volumes. He would bring Abigail wildflowers he'd found on his rides, their delicate petals a stark contrast to his rough, calloused hands, a silent offering of beauty. Their love grew in the quiet spaces between words, in shared glances over a sleeping David, in the familiar touch of hands reaching for each other. It was a love built not on fleeting passion, but on mutual respect, deep gratitude, and a shared understanding of life's complexities. Abigail cherished Micah's quiet strength, his unwavering integrity, and the sense of absolute safety he provided. Micah, in turn, found in Abigail a gentle spirit, a vibrant warmth that had thawed the long-held solitude of his heart, and a steadfast partner who enriched his life beyond measure. One crisp autumn evening, with the leaves turning to fiery hues of red and gold, Micah found Abigail sitting by the fireplace, humming a soft lullaby to a sleeping David. He sat beside her, the firelight dancing in his eyes. "Abigail," he began, his voice a low rumble. "There's something I want to ask you." Her heart fluttered. She turned to him, her eyes soft with anticipation. He took a deep breath, his gaze direct and unwavering. "You and David, you've brought more light into this house than I ever thought possible. You've brought life back to me, Abigail." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, velvet box. Her breath hitched. It wasn't the ring from her past, but a new one, a simple gold band adorned with a single clear diamond, reflecting the firelight. "Abigail Moore," he continued, his voice thick with emotion, "will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Will you marry me and make this a true family, forever?" Tears welled in Abigail's eyes, blurring the beautiful ring. This was it, the culmination of all her unspoken hopes, a promise of a future she hadn't dared to dream. "Yes, Micah," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. 1,000 times, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, its coolness a stark contrast to the warmth of her hand. It fit perfectly, a symbol not of a past loss, but of a vibrant, new beginning. He leaned in and kissed her, a tender, lingering kiss that sealed their promise. David, stirring in her arms, let out a soft gurgle, as if in approval. The wedding was a simple, heartfelt affair held on the ranch, beneath the sprawling branches of the old oak tree near the creek. Abigail wore a cream-colored dress, sewn by her own hands, adorned with wild flowers from the fields. Micah, in his best suit, looked undeniably handsome, his rugged features softened by a genuine smile. Ranch hands, neighbors from distant homesteads, and the few close friends Micah had, gathered to witness their union. As they exchanged vows, their eyes locked, a silent, profound understanding passing between them, a testament to the extraordinary journey that had brought them together. Life as a married couple was a seamless continuation of their shared existence, but with an added layer of joy and security. They worked side by side, managing the sprawling ranch, raising young David, and building a life founded on mutual respect and deep affection. Abigail found immense satisfaction in her role as wife and mother, her gentle touch evident in every corner of their home. She learned the intricacies of ranch life, from understanding cattle breeding to riding a horse with newfound confidence, always with Micah patiently guiding her. Micah, for his part, bloomed under Abigail's loving influence. The lines of worry that had once seemed etched into his face softened, replaced by a quiet contentment. He found joy in the small, everyday moments. Abigail's smile across the breakfast table, David's delighted squeals as he learned to walk, the quiet evenings spent by the fireplace, reading or simply being together. He even began to share more of his thoughts, his guarded nature slowly giving way to a profound sense of trust and intimacy. As the years passed, David grew into a robust, curious boy, inheriting Micah's quiet strength and Abigail's gentle spirit. He adored his parents, and the ranch was his playground, its vastness fueling his imagination. Abigail often watched Micah teach David to ride, to rope, to care for the animals, a lump forming in her throat at the sight of the bond that had blossomed between the two. Micah, the solitary rancher, had embraced fatherhood with an unwavering dedication, his love for David a silent but powerful force. One warm summer evening, as David, now a lively preteen, was helping Micah mend a fence, Abigail sat on the porch swing, a familiar comfort. She thought back to that desperate morning in Havenwood, clutching her ring, ready to pawn away her last hope. The contrast between then and now was stark, a testament to the profound transformation her life had undergone. She felt a surge of gratitude, a deep, abiding appreciation for the man who had seen beyond her despair and offered her not just shelter, but a whole new life. Micah and David returned, their faces smudged with dirt, but their eyes bright with shared accomplishment. David ran to Abigail, eager to tell her about his day. Micah, standing back, caught her eye and offered a small, private smile, a silent acknowledgement of the life they had built together, a life that felt impossibly rich and full. "You know," Abigail mused aloud that night, after David was asleep, as she and Micah sat by the fire, "I often wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been at the station that day." Micah reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "It was meant to be, Abigail," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Fate, or perhaps something even more." He paused, his gaze thoughtful. "I saw a woman in need of protection, and I found everything I didn't know I was missing." Abigail leaned her head on his shoulder, her heart overflowing. She had come to him with nothing but desperation and a stolen ring, and he had given her a world, a home, a family, a love that was as vast and enduring as the prairie itself. The journey had been unexpected, arduous at times, but ultimately, it had led her to a love story far grander than any she could have ever imagined. Their lives, once so disparate, had woven together into an unbreakable bond, a living testament to the power of kindness, courage, and the extraordinary path of a new life found in the heart of the Wild West. The quiet cowboy and the desperate woman, their lives intertwined by a twist of fate, had indeed built a forever, under the expansive, welcoming sky of the Circle S Ranch. It was a love story whispered on the winds, an enduring legend of redemption and profound connection. As the seasons continued their relentless dance across the vast plains, Abigail and Micah's love, like the ancient cottonwood trees lining the creek, deepened its roots, growing ever stronger with each passing year. David blossomed into a fine young man, embodying the best qualities of both his parents, Micah's steadfastness and integrity, and Abigail's warm heart and compassionate spirit. He was his father's shadow on the ranch, learning every nuance of the land and the livestock. But he also possessed a quiet thoughtfulness that reminded Abigail of her own reflective nature. The threat of Abigail's in-laws, once a dark cloud looming over her existence, had long faded into an unpleasant memory. The sheer isolation of the Circle S, coupled with Micah's quiet but formidable reputation, had deterred any attempts at interference. She knew, deep down, that she was truly safe, her child secure, and that freedom had been granted not by a desperate sale, but by a genuine act of profound kindness. The wedding ring, the one she had almost pawned, remained tucked away in a small cedar box in her dresser, a poignant reminder of her past, but no longer a symbol of despair. It was now a testament to the journey, a whisper of the courage it took to survive, and a silent acknowledgement of the new life she had been given. Micah and Abigail, now in their twilight years, spent more time enjoying the fruits of their labor. They would sit on the porch swing, watching the setting sun paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, their hands clasped together, their silences rich with decades of shared experiences. He would often tell her about the ranch's history, stories of its founding, of his own parents, connecting their present to the long lineage of the land. Grace, in turn, would share memories of her childhood, stories of her own family that she had once kept guarded, now freely given in the sanctuary of their shared life. Their conversations weren't about grand events, but the quiet details that made up a life. The first time a calf was born in a blizzard, the year the rains were particularly good, the way a certain star shone brighter in the winter sky. These seemingly small moments, woven together, formed the magnificent tapestry of their existence. One particularly clear autumn night, with the stars appearing impossibly bright against the dark velvet sky, Abigail and Micah were sitting on the porch, wrapped in a thick quilt. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of drying leaves and distant wood smoke. David, now a grown man with a family of his own, was in charge of the ranch, his capable presence a comforting assurance. "Look at that, Micah," Abigail whispered, pointing to a particularly bright constellation. "It's so vast, isn't it? Just like this land." Micah nodded, his gaze fixed on the celestial expanse. "And yet," he rumbled, his voice soft, "you can find a home, even in all that vastness, if you're with the right person." He turned his head, his eyes, though a little dimmer with age, holding a deep, unwavering love as they met hers. Abigail smiled, tears prickling at her eyes. "You were my home, Micah," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "From the moment you offered me that coffee, you built me a new life, a place where I truly belonged." He reached for her hand, his gnarled fingers gently intertwining with hers. "And you, Abigail," he murmured, his thumb stroking the back of her hand, "you showed me what it meant to truly live, to love." The silence that settled between them then was profound, filled with unspoken gratitude and a lifetime of shared memories. It was a silence that spoke of comfort, of completion, of two souls irrevocably entwined. They had faced adversity, overcome despair, and built a legacy not just of land and cattle, but of love, resilience, and the quiet dignity of a life lived with purpose. As the years advanced, their physical strength began to wane, but their spirits remained indomitable, their love a steady flame in the heart of the ranch. Their grandchildren and great-grandchildren would gather around them, listening to their stories, soaking in the quiet wisdom of a couple who had built an extraordinary life from the humblest of beginnings. Abigail would often recount the story of that fateful day in Havenwood, not with sadness, but with a sense of wonder at the unlikely turn of events, a tale of how despair could be transformed by unexpected kindness. One gentle morning, as the sun rose, casting a golden hue over the rolling hills of the Circle S, Abigail found Micah peaceful in his sleep, his hand still resting gently on the worn quilt beside him. His breathing had stilled, his journey complete. She sat beside him for a long time, holding his hand, a silent tear tracing a path down her cheek. There was a deep ache in her heart, an emptiness that only he could fill, yet there was also a profound sense of gratitude, a peace that came from knowing they had lived a full, rich life together, a life built on a foundation of kindness that had blossomed into a boundless love. Abigail lived on for several more years, surrounded by her loving family, a revered matriarch whose eyes held the wisdom of a lifetime. She continued to tend her garden, to bake her bread, and to share her stories, keeping Micah's memory alive, intertwined with her own. She often walked to the old oak tree by the creek, sitting on the bench they had shared so many times, feeling his presence in the gentle breeze, in the murmuring water, in the very soul of the land they had called home. The Circle S Ranch continued to thrive, passed down through generations, a living testament to the enduring love of Micah and Abigail. Their story became a legend whispered among the winds that swept across the plains, a tale of a desperate pregnant woman, a selfless cowboy, and the extraordinary life they forged from an act of pure, unadulterated compassion. It was a story that reminded all who heard it that sometimes the greatest treasures are found not in what we buy or sell, but in the unexpected kindness of a stranger, a lifeline thrown in despair, leading to a love that could move mountains and build an unbreakable legacy, forever etched into the heart of the wild, beautiful West. The passage of time, though inexorable, merely deepened the rich hues of Abigail and Micah's enduring legacy. Their story, far from fading into the annals of the past, became a cherished cornerstone of the Circle S Ranch, whispered in the rustle of the prairie grass and sung in the quiet hum of the wind. David, their son, now walked the land with the same quiet strength as his father, his leadership ensuring the ranch thrived, a testament to the values instilled in him. His own children, and their children in turn, grew up steeped in the tales of their grandparents, absorbing the lessons of resilience, kindness, and the profound power of an unexpected bond. Grace, her spirit as vibrant as the wildflowers she cultivated, found a profound solace in her later years. She often sat on the porch swing, watching the sun dip below the vast horizon, its fiery embrace a familiar comfort. Her hands, gnarled with age but still capable, would often rest on the familiar gold band on her finger, the one Micah had given her. It wasn't the ring she had almost pawned. That one remained a quiet, private memory in her cedar box. This ring, however, was a tangible symbol of the new life, the new love, and the boundless future he had offered her. She would recount the story of that fateful day in Havenwood, not with a sense of lingering despair, but with a quiet awe. She spoke of the trembling hands, the desperate fear, and then the sudden, unexpected appearance of a man who saw beyond her circumstances, a man who offered not charity, but a chance. She spoke of Micah's piercing blue eyes, his unwavering gaze, and the profound depth of kindness that lay beneath his stoic exterior. Her voice, though softer with age, still held the warmth of that enduring gratitude. Micah's presence, though no longer physical, remained a palpable force on the ranch. Grace felt him in the sturdy timbers of the farmhouse, in the steady rhythm of the ranch hands, in the vast, open skies he had loved so deeply. She saw his quiet strength in David's determined stride, his gentle nature in the way her grandchildren cared for the animals. He was woven into the very fabric of their lives, an eternal guardian of the home and family he had so unexpectedly built. One balmy summer evening, as the air hummed with the symphony of crickets and the distant lowing of cattle, Grace found herself by the creek, sitting beneath the sprawling branches of the ancient oak tree. The sun, a molten disk of orange and gold, cast long shadows across the water, mirroring the deepening twilight of her own life. Her heart, though still strong, carried the gentle weariness of many years. She closed her eyes, and in the gentle whisper of the breeze through the leaves, she heard Micah's voice, clear as if he were beside her, speaking the words that had become the bedrock of their life. "You're strong, Abigail, stronger than you know." A faint, peaceful smile touched her lips. She was strong. She had been strong. And she had loved, and been loved, beyond measure. Her life, born from a desperate act of survival, had blossomed into a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the profound beauty of human connection. The Circle S Ranch, standing steadfast against the endless horizon, was not merely land and livestock. It was a living monument to their extraordinary love story, a whispered legend carried on the winds of the West, a timeless beacon of hope, resilience, and the unwavering promise of a new life found and cherished forever. Grace passed away peacefully in her sleep, years after Micah, her hand resting gently on her chest, as if guarding the precious memories within. Her life had been a testament to enduring love, unexpected grace, and the quiet power of a second chance. The Circle S Ranch continued to thrive, a symbol of the legacy she and Micah had built, not just of land and cattle, but of a family bound by love, resilience, and the unforgettable story of how a desperate pregnant girl found a new life and an eternal love, all because a wealthy cowboy named Micah saw beyond her despair. The dust of Havenwood had been left far behind, replaced by the fertile ground of a shared future, where their legend would forever bloom.